Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 13 of the Memorial Memo KSR's Kentucky Women's Basketball Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Friends of Cole. Katie, it's kind of been, I would say, a slower week just because we didn't have a midweek game last week, just the Georgia game. But before we dive into kind of everything there is to talk about, just really quick, how are you doing?
I'm doing good today. Not a fan of the snow, but hope you're doing good as well.
Yeah, the snow, it's like one of those things where, like, when it snows and it stops snowing, I'm okay, like, because I can just dress warm. But when it's actively snowing and I have to be out, I can't stand it. I hate it. But, Katie, just moving on to the content part. We're going to start with just some ranking stuff, just per usual. In the AP poll, Kentucky is the number 11 team in the country now, the highest ranking since January of 2020 when they were number 11 as well. I'd say it's deserved. And, at the time of this recording, Kentucky moved up to 11 because Ohio State, who was undefeated, they dropped one to Penn State. Now, you could very well continue to move up because you have Kansas State, who hasn't lost, or at least, again, as at the time we're talking about this, they haven't lost, but their best player may be out for the season. And so that may be a factor. And you have Maryland, who just got blown out by Texas, which, Katie, I'm going to be honest, I didn't realize there was like a midseason classic going on. And I was like, why in the world is Maryland playing Texas right now? SEC versus Big Ten right now. But with that classic, I think they beat them by like 20, 25 points. And then in the net rankings, Kentucky's number 18. They were 17, but still, Kentucky 5-1 against quad 1 and 2 teams. But Katie, there's gonna be a lot more opportunity coming up for Kentucky to add to that resume.
Yeah, I think that Kentucky being at 11, like you said, is very deserved. I know that sometimes we might sound a little bit negative, but I feel like it's necessary to understand that the top 10 teams in Kentucky women's basketball or not Kentucky, in college women's basketball are just like powerhouses in a way. But like you said, Kansas State could very easily drop out of the top 10 and Kentucky could sneak in there. So I think that hopefully within the next couple of weeks we'll be seeing that. And then the net rankings always confuse me a little bit just because I know that it's statistic based and I know that it's like the most technically correct, but I just find it really weird that North Carolina is above Kentucky only because of the fact that they have 2 quad 1 wins and Kentucky has 1. I don't know. It just doesn't really make sense to me. I feel like Kentucky could probably be higher, but I know that when you get down to the facts, that's just not how they see it, I guess. I don't really...
Right, and it's kind of like this debate in like the AP poll. It's like, well, is UCLA really the number 1 team? And like, I guess it's hard to argue against it because this is an example, but like UCLA, yes, they're undefeated. Yes, they beat South Carolina, but South Carolina is also beating they beat Oklahoma by 40 the other night, and Oklahoma's a top 15 team. Like, there's an argument to be made. Like, okay, replay that game now. South Carolina probably wins. That game was at UCLA. I'm pretty sure. Just stuff like that. But I can definitely see like Kentucky lost North Carolina. They replayed that game. Kentucky probably wins that game. Just looking at it in hindsight. That game was at North Carolina. Now, of course, what's the saying? Ifs and buts, candies and nuts, I don't know. But just, coulda, woulda, shoulda, regardless. You're 16-1 and you're 5-0 in the SEC. Like, it's hard to get mad, and all you have to do is you have to keep winning. And you have a chance to do that with these next games coming up to round out the month. Katie, we're going to start with Kentucky's previous game at Georgia. Cats beat the Bulldogs 78-64 on the road. I'm not going to lie, Katie, I was pretty disappointed. And I feel like this is just me being nitpicky, but you got out to a 23-4 start to end the first quarter. And it just felt like Kentucky coasted the last 3 quarters to kind of like, okay, let's just get out of here at the win. And I don't know, yes, part of me wants to see them beat them by 45 points. But I guess at the same time I get it. I don't know, Katie. I feel a little conflicted about that game.
Yeah, and I feel like right now that's the difference that we're seeing between a team like Kentucky and a team like South Carolina, for example. South Carolina does not let off the gas ever. It doesn't matter how much they're beating the team that they're playing by. I feel like I don't think that Georgia was a great game overall just because players were not playing as great as we've usually seen them play, but I think that it would be worth it to see how much you can beat an SEC team by and kind of show people, like, okay, well, South Carolina's going to beat Oklahoma by 40. Let's beat Georgia by 60, you know? I don't know. I feel like Kentucky kind of held back a little bit, but at the same time, some people were off, and it's going to be one of those days.
Well, it's also one of those things where, we've heard Kenny talk about it, where he's like, and I mean, as he should be, he's like really into the net rankings, and he's like, all right, this is what they use to figure out NCAA tournament seeding. We need to be, whatever we can do to be better in the net, we need to do it. And one of the big things it takes into account, Katie, is point margin, like how much you beat teams by. And he said it post game. He was like, I just have to be better at not letting us take our foot off the gas. And I guess that's the main thing. But Katie, if there's one positive I can take away from that, you know how nice it is to be like, Kentucky didn't play great for 3 quarters. Kentucky, like, they played all right. And you still won by 14 on the road. Like, I think, again, and I know it's easy for us to do because we covered the team last year, but you look at last year and it's like, well, if you play bad for 3 quarters, you probably lose to Georgia by 30. And that's just, I feel like it's very nice to be able to have that this year.
Yeah, especially because you only really had two standout players. I feel like Kentucky is used to having, 4 or 5 players in double digits, and against Georgia, they only had 3. They had 2 players with 0 points, and one of those was Deja Lawrence, which is like super out of the ordinary. And so, yeah, you can't really complain about a win. Of course, we say this all the time, but you would like to see a better win. You would like to see more points. You would like to see a better differential, but like at the end of the day, a win's a win. So, what does it really matter?
Yeah, and it's just one of those things, and you talk about Deja, like, I'm not worried about her, but I just, man, 0 points. I think she shot, like, just 4 shots. I think she was 0
Yeah.
4. Like, just not a great game from her, but, I'm not worried about her. Like, of all the things to be worried about, I don't think Deja's the thing to be worried about. But Katie, talking about some of the good from that game, Claire Strack, she had arguably her best game at Kentucky. I mean, I don't know if it's the best, but it's certainly one of. 25 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists for her. She just continues to, like, that Mississippi State game, she struggled. And ever since then, Katie, she's proven, okay, I can be an SEC big.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially because she's starting to prove her versatility in the sense that she can see the court, and she also was 1 of 5 from 3, so getting to see one of those go in was kind of a step in the right direction, I think. But yeah, I mean, she played great, and her and Georgia played the most minutes on the team. They played exactly the same 38 minutes and 18 seconds, and I just thought she did a great job of being able to compete with the size that Georgia has, especially because she was the highest scorer on the team. I think that she had a lot to prove.
Yeah, it's just, I'm really enjoying watching her play because I feel like Clara Strack, I watch it, I'm like, man, it's so great we have her this year. It's so great she's doing all this. And Kenny kind of says the same thing in his press conference. He's like, oh, wait, we have her for 2 more years. Like, Clara Strack, she's going to be here. She's supposed to be a freshman. She's a sophomore doing this. She played 2 games last year, really, for crying out. She started in 2 games last year anyway. Like, she has really come along for not having that many reps under her belt. But someone who does have those reps, Katie, Georgia Amore, 24 points, 8 assists. She did, and I feel like it's worth noting, she had 7 turnovers. You hate that. But I feel like you're with, it's like, I think we've said it before with her. Like, you take what you give and you take with her. Like, 24 points, 8 assists, woo! 7 turnovers, aw. But I think at the end of the day, you get that kind of stat line from her. I think you have to be okay, Katie.
Yeah, especially because she is the point guard. She's the player that has the ball in her hands for the majority of the game. And so, yeah, 7 turnovers is pretty bad. But, like you said, we take what we can get. And I think that she's been playing great otherwise. And and I mean, we say this again a lot of times, but I think that she was struggling with production and now she's clearly not. And so it's great to see her being able to score 20 plus points per game. And those 7 turnovers, I feel like they never happen in detrimental situations. I feel like we could call them smart turnovers. Maybe she turns the ball over in a smarter way than we realize. Maybe it's deeper than just a turnover. I don't know.
I actually think as I don't know, I don't want to say weird, but as odd as that sounded to me in my head, I think that's actually a really good point. Like against Louisville, for example, she turned the ball over 8 times, and I remember I remember that specifically because Jeff Wall's postgame was like, "We made her turn the ball over 8 times," and it's like, okay, but you lost in overtime. Like, congrats, I guess. But his point in saying that was, she can do so much. She does so much good. It's like those turnovers, and the thing here about her at Kentucky too, it's like you said, she is the ball dominant player. She's the point guard. Everything is ran through her. So of course, I guess she's gonna have the turnovers. You'd love to see her cut them down, but I think another thing, Kentucky is the best assist to turnover ratio team in the country, or excuse me, the SEC, and one of the best in the country. So clearly, okay, I mean, you're getting your bang for your buck with her, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, especially because as long as she keeps her assist number over her turnover number, I don't really care. I think as long as it's not handing the game away, we'll take 7 turnovers.
And then Amelia Hassett, Katie, 14 points, 10 rebounds. Another double-double for her. Just the only disappointing part, and because we talked about Deja and kind of the rest of the team for the most part, just felt like those 3 were the only one who came to play, and that was unfortunate. But Tiani Key did have 9 points and 4 rebounds, so that's good too. But Katie, before we even preview these upcoming 2 games, on Tuesday, Kenny Brooks had a midweek press conference, and in the midst of it, he talked about Jordan Obi, because Jordan Obi, she's missed every game this season. She hasn't touched the floor, and UK can't say what the injury is. There's HIPAA, there's all these rules, there's stuff that's above my pay grade that I'm not even sure about. But lower leg injury, from what I've heard, it may have been something Achilles, but I don't know, because the fact she could come back and play this season, I don't know if it's Achilles. But regardless, Jordan Obi, the point being, she's been out all year, and she's shown up on these injury reports, Katie, and that means, there's the possibility of her coming back. And before I even talk about what I think about it, I'm just going to read what Kenny said, just word for word, his quote from Tuesday's press conference. So Kenny said, when asked about Jordan Obi, he said, "She's moving now, she's out there, and she looks really good. She looks really good, it's a tease. But obviously we're excited for her progression because it was devastating for her when she got injured. You could see it all over her face. She came here to play for Kentucky, but she's been exceptional. We've kept her involved so that she's watching every practice. She's involved in film sessions where I'm asking her questions from an outside perspective. What did you see kind of thing. And then the last week or so, we got to see her move around a little bit as far as her future, and I feel like this is probably the main thing Kenny said. He said, as far as her future goes, we're going to take it slow. We're not going to do anything to rush that situation, and we're going to do what's best for her, even though it's very tempting." So, Katie, what that tells me is, I don't think she's playing this season. Even though she's coming along very well in her recovery and her progression, I don't think she's coming back. But I do have to ask, Katie, because I think I just have to ask. Let's say Kentucky ends the regular season, 23-5, 24-4. I don't know, somewhere in there. You have you make a run in the SEC tournament. You're a 2, 3, 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. Do you bring her back towards that time? Do you think you make a push? Because here's the thing, and this is the case with Jordan Obi. You play her now, you don't get her back next year. If you wait on it, you have her for all year next year, when your team is probably going to be better, considering everybody who's coming in and returning. So, I have to ask Katie, assuming she could go at some point, sometime next month, maybe this time next month, right? Do you bring Jordan Obi back? Or do you say, hey, let's just wait till next year?
One thing that I have thought is really odd about this whole thing is we haven't heard any news of any kind of medical red shirt, and I feel like at this point in the season, you would want to go ahead and say, like, hey, she's not going to play, so, like, don't plan for it. I think the fact that she hasn't yet, I feel like he's almost saving her for an NCAA tournament run if they feel like they need her. But of course, I think that her coming back next year would probably be better for her health. But if she's feeling 100%, I don't feel like you want to waste her. But then again, you could argue that it would be wasting her to only play her for 3 weeks of basketball. So it's hard because you don't really know. Like, I don't even know what I would do in that case. And if I were Jordan, I would probably want to play as fast as I could, but you also have to think about your future as a player and, should she want to go to the WNBA maybe? Like, maybe she'll want to play a full season and see what she can do and see if she gets any prospects or anything like that. And I don't know. I almost feel like she probably won't play this season. I feel the same as you. I don't think that she's going to, but I would enjoy seeing her. I don't know if it's worth it, but I guess we will see.
Yeah, I'm like you. If I'm a betting man, I'm probably saying she's not playing this year. But I do think it's interesting. They're not ruling her out. Like, the difference between her and Dom is that Dom is ruled out. She's done. She's back for next year, right? I mean, unless she just happens to enter the portal. Like, the plan is to have her back next year. But with Jordan, the talk is a little different, and I mean, it's clearly different because she's on these injury reports, meaning she's still in, could play. But I don't think she'll play. I don't know. I think I'm like you. I think I'd rather save her for next year. Like, look, we're returning basically everybody outside of Georgia and Deja. We're bringing in an awesome freshman. We're going to go get a tremendous point guard for you. Like, I would say save her for next year. Mm-hmm. And the other thing too, that the other variable in this, and I think we've talked about it before. This team has learned to play without her.
Yeah.
This team has learned to adjust without Dom and Jordan Obi, and I think at this point or this late in the season, it could throw a wrinkle in the rhythm, in the chemistry. It could mess things up a little bit. So I think I'm like you. I think I'd rather have her back next season. But I will say, if it's looking like Kentucky can go make history, make an Elite Eight or Final Four, why not? Why not make a push and see? But I think I would almost rather still have her back next year, regardless. Katie, we're going to talk about Texas A&M and Arkansas, but beforehand, let's give a quick shout to our friends over at Friends of Coal. Friends of Coal is dedicated to informing and educating Kentucky citizens about the coal industry and its vital role in the state's future. We provide a united voice for an industry that has been and remains a critical economic contributor to Kentucky. By working together, we can provide good jobs and benefits for future generations. Coal is resilient, reliable, and affordable. Friends of Coal is a volunteer organization. All are invited to be a part of our organization, which consists of proud Kentuckians as well as residents from beyond our borders. Head to friendsofcoalkentucky.org to learn more. But yeah, just moving on to Texas A&M, Kentucky's next game on Thursday. The Aggies, last season they were actually a pretty decent team, made the NCAA tournament, but this year I don't know if that's going to be the case. Mm-hmm. The Aggies are 9-8 and 2-3 in the SEC. Katie, I do want to note, they are horrible. If there's one thing to know about them, just real quick, they are the worst three-point shooting team in the SEC. They shoot 24.6% from deep, and that's 329th in the country. So, just before you even dive into stats of players and what could go this way or that way, just know if they beat you with the three, hats off to them, right? Because congrats, this was your night to hit the three.
Yeah, they are coming off a win over Georgia, a 5-point win over Georgia. And the reason being is because they had an 18-5 run in the fourth quarter. So they were losing. They were actually losing to Georgia. I think that, with that being said, Kentucky should have no problem coming out on top. But all it takes is one random on day. I don't think that's going to happen. but I mean, I feel pretty confident about this game. So, just yeah, how are you feeling?
I mean, they've had a pretty up and down year. If you can see on the screen, they beat Ole Miss at home. Ole Miss was, I believe, number 25 in the country at that time, maybe. And then their worst loss, they lost to Texas A&M Corpus Christi to open their year. Like they got their year started off in probably the worst note you could. But Katie, just getting into some player stats real quick. Aisha Coulibaly, 12.4 points per game, 5.1 rebounds per game. Katie, I would say she's their best player, probably the top person for them to watch out for.
Yeah, I mean, especially it's weird for them because I believe they're coming off of the year with Talia Scott, who kind of led them through their whole,
She was
postseason run.
She was at Arkansas, who we'll talk about in a second. Yeah.
Anyways, so they didn't have Talia Scott. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think that with your best player only averaging about 12 points a game, I feel like it's kind of hard to be able to win games, especially like you said. I mean, they are the worst three-point team in the country or in the SEC. So it's going to be difficult to go against a team like Kentucky, who is now consistently shooting 8 or 9 threes a game.
And then you have, it's like you said, when your top scorer only averages 12 points a game, that's tough. But Katie, it's even tougher when you only have two players who average double-digit points. The other one being Sahara Jones, 10.5 points, 6.9 rebounds per game. And then really the only other player I think that there is to really talk about would be Jada Malone. She averages 9.4 points and 5 rebounds per game, as far as I can tell. It looks like Texas A&M, I don't know if they are... I mean, you should go win this game. Road games are tough, but as you saw with Georgia, they don't have to be tough if you don't want them to be. Mm-hmm. But I would say Kentucky, Katie, I would imagine you agree, should go to 6-0.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
And then there's Arkansas. The Razorbacks, we have two Razorback teams coming to Lexington with men's basketball as well. Of course, that one a little bit more on the line with Cal coming into town. Arkansas, Katie, I think I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. They're one of the worst teams to ever touch a basketball, and that's just how I feel about them. They're 8-12, 1-4 in the SEC. You can see they beat Auburn not too long ago, but they lost to Bowling Green. Very up and down year. Arkansas, Katie, Oregon. Okay, so in the offseason, Katie, because of the realignment, Oregon State was poached. Oregon State lost their entire team, but that was almost kind of the same case with Arkansas. It's like you talked about earlier. Talia Scott left Arkansas. She's at Auburn now, but you lose your best player. Sailor Poffenberger is great, tremendous post play rebounders at Maryland now. Arkansas got poached, and I don't know how long Mike Neighbors will be down there. Not to throw him on the hot seat myself, but I think that's probably fair to say. I think that's almost a well-known fact. They're projected less in the conference, but point being, Katie, just Arkansas may not be very good.
Yeah, I mean, their only SEC win so far is against Auburn with Talia Scott. But their only other 4 SEC games that they've played have been against top 20 teams like LSU, Texas, Tennessee, and Alabama. They've lost all 4 of those, but they haven't really gotten to the point of the SEC where they're playing. They have not played Texas A&M, and they haven't played Georgia, and they haven't played Ole Miss. So it's kind of hard to tell how bad they actually are because they're playing really good teams right now. Of course, like you said, they lost to Bowling Green back in November. That was by 1, which granted you probably shouldn't lose to Bowling Green, but it was only a 1-point loss. However, they lost to Oral Roberts by 21, so that's definitely worse. And then they were the team that UCLA beat by about 50 earlier in the season. So, yeah, I mean, they're not very good, but like you said, I mean, it's tough to tell right now, but yeah, I don't think Kentucky should have issues with this one either.
Oral Roberts, man. It's like the when you get directional schools like Northern, Eastern, Southern, and names of people, that's when you just know they're not a good team. You know, you don't even have to look that much further into it. But Katie, they do have one really, really good player, guard Izzy Higginbottom. She's averaging 23.6 points and 4 rebounds per game, as well as 3.6 assists per game. She's their best player. I think she's kind of really the only reason they're even competitive in the SEC. But Izzy Higginbottom, Katie, that is very clearly the main name to watch out for in this game against Arkansas coming up.
Yeah, and I think that her and Georgia are honestly a little bit similar to me in the way that they play. They both like to play a fast paced game. They're both on the smaller side of a college basketball player, and they're both very experienced. However, Izzy Higginbottom went to Arkansas State, whereas Georgia got her experience at Virginia Tech. So it's a little bit different in their experience, but I think that they're very similar. I think that's definitely the matchup that we're going to be seeing.
And then there's Kiki Smith, 11.1 points, 2.4 assists. But I think the main thing to know about her, she's their best three-point shooter, 40.2% from deep. Arkansas, they're kind of a middle-of-the-pack three-point shooting team. But Katie, Kiki Smith, she can really hurt you from deep. Kentucky's defense on the perimeter has been kind of off and on all year. The paint defense has kind of been there, but the perimeter defense, can they guard the three? Kiki Smith will certainly put Kentucky to the test.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think definitely we'll see Deja on her just to kind of give her that pressure that she'll need on the perimeter. So hopefully they can hold her to less than 10 points.
And then they have a 6'4" post Vera Ojanua, 7.8 points and 7.3 rebounds per game. Kentucky's bigs probably better. I mean, obviously, probably a little bit better, and then definitely have the size advantage. So I'm not too worried about her. But main point being, Katie, these next two games against Texas A&M and Arkansas, you just have to win these games. There's no reason you should lose either of these games, and that way on January 30th, you can go into that Alabama game, Katie. You would go into it 18-1. I'm good at math. 18-1, and 7-0 in the conference. And if you beat Alabama on January 30th, Katie, it's the best start you've ever had in the history of your program. It'd be 19-1 and 8-0 in the conference.
That would be crazy, especially because after that is Oklahoma, and I feel like Oklahoma is a team that Kentucky can probably beat. I just feel like the Alabama game is a little hump that they have to get over. That would be incredible, especially for Kenny Brooks' first year.
It would be insane to hear that, I seriously, we did a KSR staff predictions thing prior to the year, and I seriously thought about putting Kentucky at 19-9 as their regular season record. And it would be insane for year one for Kenny Brooks to come in here and be 19-1 to start. But just kind of an incredible start to the Kenny Brooks era. But Katie, it doesn't matter if you need to win the games you need to win, because like you said, February 2nd you play Oklahoma. Things kind of start, from February 2nd to March 2nd. The gauntlet is there. It's going to be brutal. If Kentucky, I think in my opinion, if Kentucky can go 500 in that month stretch, that's a win. But Katie, just to wrap up the episode, again, 2 games you need to win coming up. I think Kentucky will win, but Kentucky is on an excellent pace, Katie, to make history this year.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, they've already made history because,
That's true.
Kenny Brooks is in his first season, and he's had one of the best starts in the history of the program. I think just he's proving everyone, nobody doubted him. He's proving everybody right. I feel like with the state of what Kentucky women's basketball was in last season and the complete 180 that it has done this season, it's really bringing people back to the sport, and it's great to see fans caring about this team. And I think the future is really bright for them so far.
I'm glad you brought up the fans, because I actually saw today where student ticket claims went up for LSU, Texas, and Tennessee, and I think there's another game mixed in there. I can't even remember which one it was. But, for those 3 games, Memorial Coliseum ought to be one of the best environments in the country. It ought to be a really good time. But we got a minute till then. We have some games until we get to that point. So it really just up to Kentucky to take care of business until we get there. I think this is actually our shortest episode to date. But that's in part due to scheduling. And hey, they didn't give us a midweek game. So I guess you'll take it. I'm Phoenix Stevens here alongside Katie Hutchison. 13 episodes deep now into the Memorial Memo. Just, I'm proud of us. You know that? I'm proud of us for what we do. But regardless, Kentucky, they should win these next 2 games. And we will see you all next time back here on the KSR YouTube channel.